Welcome everyone to the open source panel with Jonathan and Christian. I'm David. I'm going to be walking us through this panel, asking some interesting questions, trying to kind of noodle some interesting answers out of the pair that we have today. So with that, I'm going to let Jonathan introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Jonathan Lips, and I think my most relevant attribute for this panel is that I work on the Appium project and have done that for a very long time now. I think it's in the 13-ish years range, and have worked at a number of companies in the testing space, Sauce Labs and Headspin, and ran my own consulting firm for a while, and currently not working directly in the testing industry. I've joined the PlayStation team at Sony and doing some really fun engineering stuff there. So yeah, that's me. I live in Vancouver, BC, which is where I'm zooming in from, and have a lot of love and respect for David and Christian. Really excited to have this conversation with them.
Awesome. Thank you. Christian, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Christian. Similar to Jonathan, I've been working in the open source for a while. My part is the working on the Web.ro project, which I started in university and has followed me along, got me, started working at Sauce Labs actually, where I met Jonathan. And I basically took it to every job that I took since I left Sauce Labs. Right now, I'm working at OutSystems on the Stencil.js framework, which is a web component compiler. And so we use it there to test web components left and right, kind of like component testing, doing a lot of that there. And yeah, my biggest joy is to enable other people to contribute to the project and contribute to open source and help them, enjoy the same things that I do.
Awesome. And I think that kind of leads really nicely into my first question, right? Like, so all three of us have managed to do open source in various forms and even get paid for it, right? The kind of the holy grail when it comes to open source. Um, but how has this kind of shaped how you approach software, right? Like, I don't want to start with the Appium and WebDriver, but like Christian, you said it's like it's followed you everywhere, right? Uh, like, so you'll start with you, Christian. Like, how is it shaping
Mhm.
how you approach software development now as a whole because of what you've been doing in the past?
Yeah, I mean, generally, like open source is the perfect tool and vehicle to learn new technologies. I think I learned promises. I learned a lot about promises in JavaScript through WebDriver. I learned a lot about monads and TypeScript through WebDriver, and all that like can be a tremendous great platform to learn new technologies. Personally, when I built the way I build software today, and the way I think has WebDriver has taught me to build software is to always accompany your software with the right tests. And especially with a large project like WebDriver that comes with a lot of different features that we cannot even write down on one piece of paper, it has become very important that we kind of like specify the behavior of our software through tests. And with the large size of WebDriver, I really appreciated that, writing more tests definitely helps me to understand the behavior of my software much better.
That's awesome. Jonathan?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned early on in my software development career, I'm self-taught and studied philosophy and linguistics and things like that. So I didn't have a computer science background. And really, I think it's only because of open source software that I was able to do all this in the first place, trying to get Red Hat Linux serving something that I was trying to publish to the web, and having to deal with RPMs and getting into all kinds of strange situations on the server, and having a very large forum to go to of people that have figured this stuff out, and all the code being there. Um, it it's more than just a set of free products that anyone can use. It's, I think, primarily a development process. Um, there's a famous older book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, where I think, you can get the main idea just by the title, where open source software development happens in public in this kind of open and chaotic space. And it's not about creating this massive monolithic, perfect artifact and then dropping it on the world. It's about, say, having an idea, having something that's minimally useful, putting it out there, getting other people's feedback on it, turning out to be useful for other people as well with some modifications, and opening up a collaborative space for others to join in. And as I said, it's a much more chaotic process, but in some ways, I think a much more effective process. You've got the famous quote, I think from Linus, maybe someone else, about, with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow, right? And so there's a lot of benefits to having a large number of people being able to see the work that's being done. And this is extremely important in things like public infrastructure, which open source I consider now to be part of the public infrastructure just as much as roads and bridges and things like that. Um, so I think you can even carry this into proprietary work environments where, for one reason or another, you're not writing public code or producing, public projects. There's the concept of inner source, which a lot of companies have adopted to kind of get the benefits of the open source model even within their own large organizations. And so I've seen that to be quite effective, kind of up and down my career. Um, I think personally, it's also just been a lot of fun to be able to do work in public. A lot of people don't have the benefit of getting to show off what they're proud of, or maybe also have their mistakes on display. That's one of the things about working in open source as well, is that you've got to be relatively immune to people's opinions because everyone will have them, and you're going to make mistakes, and you have to just always be on the lookout for how to improve. And but I think that's a really powerful way in which to grow up as an engineer. And I highly recommend it to every engineer that I work with to get involved in some open source project, even if it's at a very small level, because I think it's just a great skill to have. So there's a bunch of random thoughts on open source, I guess.
I think
No,
you made a great point there about the notion about an open source project doesn't necessarily need to be finished. Like you come up with a crazy idea and you just put it out and have other people contribute to it. And I feel that like something that open source work teaches you is like to think with a sustainability mindset. Like you build something that you allow other people to attach on, right, and to contribute on, and that helps. That is also, I feel like, very useful if you build proprietary software, because you often come into companies where you see this whole monolithic old project that no one wants to maintain anymore, and that's because they were not thinking about all these
Right.
ideologies about how can I build software that has us, with a sustainable mindset.
That's right.
yeah. No, I remember when I started working on Selenium with Simon, God, 2008, long time ago. And the thing that he always said when like him and Jim and a few of us were getting started to kind of help him out on the project, right? Like we had seen it, we thought, oh, this seems like a really cool project to join. Was he always said that like, let's make the APIs look near perfect. Whatever's underneath can be the worst code in the world. But if we just focus on how people are going to use it, and we'll figure out the rest later, let's do that, right? And that's kind of he attributes that to, I think, Joe Wellens, but I could be someone else, right? Like he's like, I was taught this, I'm now teaching you. Like it's always this pay it forward service, right? You always learn more from working with others, so that's really cool.
Yeah, and in terms of the commenting on the pay it forward, it becomes an integral part of how open source survives too. I mean, I'm in a phase right now where I'm not the most active contributor of code to Appium. There are other people who are contributing more code. Um, and if I hadn't been open to kind of teaching and mentoring and it giving responsibility to people who were surprised that I was giving it to them, then the project would probably have gone through rougher periods than it has. And so you have to have a much more open hand, I think, when it comes to managing open source projects, and that's just a different paradigm.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, what are the biggest challenges, Jonathan? This question specifically for you is kind of like you've based on what you just said. What are the biggest challenges that are facing like open source projects? And if people want to join the community, or if there are companies thinking actually we should be supporting this, like how can we get those people helping your project?
Yeah, good question. It does feel that, you know, open source has gone through a bit of a sea change in the last 10 years. Um, it's one of those things where uh, if a sufficient number of people are putting in, then everybody really benefits. But if that
Mhm.
number drops below a certain threshold, then everybody loses. Um, and so, I guess you could think of it like torrenting, which nobody does. But if you don't have enough people seeding into the ecosystem, then it basically doesn't work for anybody. Um, but the cost of seeding is relatively small. It's just enough people have to be doing it. And so I've seen a lot of companies in the last 5, 10 years. I mean, there have been economic trials, and so I think one of the first areas that these companies look at is like, well, what work are we doing that isn't directly contributing to our bottom line? And they erroneously look at open source work as falling into that category. Um, Not, I think, it generally understanding the benefit that they get out of the entire ecosystem, and the little bit that they're putting in may not have a direct, obvious return, but the threat to their business of the entire ecosystem collapsing is extremely critical. So I see some bad thinking on the part of some companies in the industry, or just short-sighted thinking, I guess. And so that's one challenge. I think the number one thing companies can do is to remember that point that, you know, by everybody putting in a little bit, everybody wins a lot. And it may be that you're the first one to have to take that move. And it's like any kind of investment, it's easier to follow than to lead. Um, so I think we're in a place where some companies are a little bit skittish about making those kinds of investments. And so my encouragement would be just to say that at least historically, I think the general return of a healthy ecosystem is much higher than what it costs to contribute in small ways to it. Um, so I think contributions of maintainership and code to specific projects that a company relies on are always the best way to support an ecosystem because there's a direct incentive line there. I think right below that is supporting a project or ecosystem with dollars, because that's often something that can unlock development time that we wouldn't have. And so this is something that I know BrowserStack has been heavily engaged in, and our projects here benefit quite heavily from that. And so I think that's a really wonderful way of showing a commitment to open source and to this larger ecosystem. Um, so yeah, those are the two main things. I think just being a taker. I mean, being isolationist in general, something that we could talk about in regards to more than open source right now. But I think that what I don't want to see is companies becoming isolationist in this way, because I think everybody loses the way that, everybody loses in a global economy when an economy collapses. But I'll stop there.
No, I agree with that, and like kind of with what, because I know Christian, you've got similar views on this. Like, how do you see this impacting kind of roadmaps and things like that for WebDriver O over the next 2 to 3 years? Where like I know you're trying to create a sustainable model through kind of the OpenJS, paying it forward to people who do contribute. So you do have companies paying in to kind of help support that. Like, how is that positively, negatively? I don't know the answer to impacting your roadmap.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that I get support by companies like BrowserStack to the project, it kind of enables me to put certain roadmap item on the list that I couldn't be doing on myself, just working on it on WebDriver myself, because I'm not a full-time employee working on WebDriver. So all these contributions actually accelerate development of these projects. And you know, to the point that Jonathan was making, you know, there's one thing when the economy like is not in the best shape that, you know, people dropped contributions to open source projects, but it's especially critical for projects that are related to Q&A, right? Like I think every company or larger companies, we see them also dropping QA teams first rather than development teams. So that also like has an impact and also on the tools. So yeah, you know, sustainability is always, you know, on top of my mind when, you know, I work on the WebDriver project, and just thanks to contributions, you know, I can help pay out contributors and kind of like enable new roadmap items to actually being executed on and work on, which is amazing.
Yeah, just Appium also does something similar of this paying contributors with
Yeah. No, we were directly inspired by WebDriver IO's scheme and took it with a couple modifications, but it was very much the model that we were interested to follow. So thanks, Christian, and BrowserStack.
Well, no, the kind of all the best ideas are copied, right? And I think it's like it comes back to your idea of collaboration, right? Appium is very separate in its development from the Selenium project, but you take a lot of the similarities. WebDriver, but at the end of the day, all three of our projects could never be where they are if it wasn't for that collaboration, right? Like working with each other, kind of at least making sure that we didn't try to kill each other. Like, it was like, actually, let's learn, let's do this, right? And I know the Selenium project has kind of learned like other ideas from the way like Puppeteer, Playwright, and that's where WebDriver BiDi is coming in. And I know both of you have implemented it in your projects as well to kind of actually, these are really cool ideas. Let's promote it. And so
yeah. To add to that one point, I want to especially highlight the collaboration between the Appium and the WebDriver project is really amazing. I see, you know, contributors like Mikola from the Appium team join like filing issues or features ideas in the WebDriver project. I think based on that, we kind of like started the BiDi work in Appium from the beginning, and now we have like BiDi support in Appium, which is helps a lot with our visual testing capabilities in WebDriver. So both teams, both projects have went through that collaboration.
That is really amazing, and it's awesome. So, like through this collaboration, the sharing of ideas, growing our projects, kind of bit of a quick fire round for both of you. I'll start with you, Jonathan. What is the most underrated features or plugins that kind of teams should start taking advantage of that you've like thought of and got into your ecosystem?
Oh wow. I'm not sure what's underrated. I'm not really sure how people rate the plugins in general. We don't have any telemetry tracking things like popularity or usage. Um, yeah, I do want people to start exploring the BiDi mechanisms that we have for two reasons. One, I think it unlocks some new features and new performance that weren't there before. And two, because it's going to be the way that everything works moving forward. And as we've seen, I think in previous spec migrations, it's better to hop on early and start to rearrange your test code, or at least figure out what's impacted, than to wait until the thing that you're using is no longer supported and then come and, you know, complain to the project that something is broken. Yeah, so I would recommend that people start looking at the BiDi features in Appium and WebDriver IO. You know, there's a growing ecosystem of Appium plugins, some of which I've not even really used myself, some of which have to do with AI, for example. So if that's kind of your particular leaning at this point to explore those sorts of technologies, There's a handful of new things that have come out even in the last week or two. Some model context protocol servers and things like that that can help you with your test authoring. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna pass to Christian because he probably has more wise things to say.
I think on the WebDAO side, the most underrated feature is actually the Electron plugin that we have, the service that allows you to test Electron application. We have someone from Great Britain working on that, I think for fun, less for profit. But he has built an amazing plugin. He got some support from someone else on that, but ultimately they've been working really hard on it. And I think a month ago I checked in with the Slack team, and they actually have confirmed that they are now using it to test Slack, which is amazing. Then some other like non-core things like the visual testing part. I think Wim Salas, one of the main technical steering committee members, has been doing a tremendous work on creating a very feature-rich visual testing feature for WebDAO and plugin for WebDAO with its own reporting and all that kind of stuff. So I love all these kind of like contributions that come from the outside, from people that have these interests in these areas, and again, my job is to enable that for them. And I would love to have more people just coming in and I want to use WebDAO to test this, and it's like, perfect, we have a platform for you here.
Awesome. Kind of along that theme, if you've both done a bit of consulting, you've both helped people along the way. Someone comes to you and goes, I've looked at my web application, my mobile application, whatever, and I have no idea where to start. Like, what's the first piece of advice you would just give them? And this is a question for both of you. Christian, I'll let you start first.
I think it's always good to start looking under the hood of things, right? With all the complex items or entities that exist in the world, where we are like, how does it even work? It's always like, once you look under the hood, it kind of like the secret unravels, and you kind of figure out how things work. And the same works with not only testing applications, but also just development in general. If you are curious to look under the hood and see how things work, like in the web application phase, like open up the dev tool, see where the elements are located, and start tweaking your first WebDAO or Appium tests to automate that browser or that mobile device. I think things will come along very quickly. And if in automation especially, I have recommended a lot of people to improve on their automation skills, to just look into how the automation framework works, look into how Appium does the automation, because that will help you as an automation engineer, especially to understand, hey, this error comes from my application, or this error comes from Appium because it needs something that I don't provide. Things like that definitely help to become better engineers.
Yeah, I think if someone came to me and said, I'm in charge of automating this mobile app and I have no idea what I'm doing, I would, I'd recommend a couple things they could do in parallel. One would be to learn Python, if they don't already. I think that's the language that I generally recommend for beginners in this space, because I think it's the sweet spot of expressivity, flexibility, library support, tooling support, ecosystem, generic developer facilities, things like that. So I would say, don't just start copying and pasting some test code that you found, like actually work on your skills as an engineer, because those end up being very, very important later on. Most of the problems that I've seen consulting on like large Appium-based test suites are kind of general software development problems. They're not, problems with Appium or people not knowing how to perform a certain kind of automation. It's, oh, well, you wrapped this method and now you're calling it 15 times and that's why it's slow, so things like that, right? So that's one thing I would recommend. The other thing is to say, just download Appium Inspector and throw your app in there and just start looking around, kind of what Christian was saying about view page source. It's sort of the equivalent. And tap around in the inspector and record some steps, and look at the generated code and understand that, and even copy and paste it into a script to start from. That's kind of the intended purpose of that feature. And then go from there. Read documentation. There's a number of books and things out now on guides on how to do all this. But yeah, getting some solid software development principles down, and playing with the tools, I think, is a great way to start.
Yeah, I like. I'm going to echo that. For those who have been following along in Breakpoint, if you have missed my lightning talk, I kind of did a very similar talk to what Jonathan just said, where focus on not the tool, but kind of how everything holds together, how things are built, because then suddenly you can have a better view into how you go about testing, right? So it gives you a understanding kind of how the sausage is made, goes a long way, really. Awesome. So we're kind of coming towards the end of our time. If you could pick like one idea that people could like go, right, I want to start implementing that idea for you, right? Because you've said over the time that you'd like to get contributors involved. What is it that people can start with? It doesn't need to be code. I think that's really important to say. But like, what is the like people? What is your kind of call to action to people? Where can people get involved? Where can they get it? Help you and get started. I'll start with you, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, we have a Discord server that people can join on discord.webdriver.io, and that's the best way to start joining the community. There's a contributing channel on there that you can join. Just, if you don't have any idea, you can just be like, hey, I would love to contribute. What are the things that I can do these things? Where are the touch points where I can start contributing? And I'm happy to direct, or there are people that be like, hey, I could need help here, I could need help there. And I think that's generally a good approach to join in an open source project.
Yeah, I'd say something similar with regard to Appium. Some specific areas would be documentation for some of the core drivers. The main server documentation is already quite substantial and complete, but I think there are some improvements that could be made in the driver documentation. So if you, for example, really know the UI Automator 2 driver well from a user's perspective, getting involved in the documentation effort would be fantastic. We have a set of discussion forums, discuss.appium.io, where people help each other. We could always use more knowledgeable folks there answering questions and creating guides and things like that. Another thing that's kind of on the radar from more of a deeper technical perspective is this BiDi migration. So I think, implementing some of the standard WebDriver commands as BiDi commands is a little bit of a migration job that we need to do internally, and could use some folks to help build that out. Otherwise, yeah, just find one of the projects in the Appium org on GitHub. We have many different repos there. Something that you're interested in, like the Appium Inspector, for example, and just troll through some open issues and see what you find. And we also have a Slack channel for people who want to contribute, for contributors to the Appium project, that you could join and lurk and learn some things and then go do some things.
Awesome. And definitely, if there's people watching this and later you're not sure how to get in contact with either of you, if you want to send me a message on kind of the BrowserStack Discord, Selenium, Slack, or any other one of those, I will get you to kind of the right places for both Christian and Jonathan, because the more the merrier, right? It's all
That's
about
right.
awesome.
And you can earn money with it.
That's right. Yeah, make PRs, get dollars, or whatever your local
That's right.
currency is. Yeah.
Amazing. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up. Thank you both for kind of your time today. I really appreciate it. I know about how busy both of you are. And if there are any questions for people that people have for you, I'm sure do you want to give them kind of the best way, socials or whatever, to get in contact with you? I'll let you start, Jonathan.
Sure. I'm jlips.com on Blue Sky. That's my main public social handle at the moment. I'm also in the Selenium Slack. You know, don't just DM me for no reason, but if you've got a question about Appium, we have an Appium channel that I sometimes look around in. Yeah, feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, for me, you can find all my socials on broman.dev.
Brilliant. And with that, I will kind of close up the session. Thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ed. Bye.